Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're going to be talking about a 10-cent uncommon card. It's moved down to uncommon recently. That is honestly absolutely bonkers. This card used to be a bit more expensive and stuff now, but now the fact that it's dropped down and every single new set that's coming out, this card, in my opinion, is just getting better and better. Now, before we get into that, we've got a couple of different things to talk about. Huge shout out and thank you to everyone that's subscribed and all that kind of stuff. We're slowly getting to our goal of 10,000 subscribers. We have a new logo and everything like that. I'm working hard to kind of build the channel up and, become a really kind of great Magic content creator. And thank you so much to all the kind words that you guys have left below. You guys don't know how much they mean to me. So yeah, we've got a new logo and everything like that I'm going to upgrade eventually. But at the moment, we've got a Patreon too. If you guys want to go support me there, I'll put the link down below for that. And I actually am just opening up a Discord. If you guys want to head on to that as well, I'll put the links to all of that stuff down in the comments so that way you guys can check them out. So what am I talking about here? Now, if you don't know, in LCI, they introduced a new type of token. Previously, this wasn't, a new type of counter. Previously, this wasn't a counter. It was essentially just something that people had to keep track of and in the background. But then they decided with LCI to make it an actual counter, which I'm talking about finality counters. Finality counters are a very interesting mechanic. Essentially, what it means is that when a permanent dies that has a finality counter on it, instead of it going to the graveyard, it gets exiled. Here, they designed it to minimize memory issues for cards that return something from the graveyard with, if it would die, it's exiled instead. So these are a proper counter now that you will be using on cards. And as you guys have probably noticed, I've noticed a fair bit, they've started using them a lot more. They kind of, started out with a whole bunch with LCI, and then we got some in MKM as well, mostly kind of starting out in like the Commander products here with both of these two in Commander products. And then we had the Fallout ones, but now with the most recent two sets, namely, Modern Horizons 3, and then even in Bloomburrow, they've been slowly adding more and more finality counter stuff in. Now, this card here isn't only useful for finality counters, but I'm starting by talking about finality counters because that is the best use for it, in my opinion. Obviously, there's ways to prevent cards from getting counters, but this way you can actually use these counters to your advantage. Now, the card I'm talking about here is Nesting Grounds. This previously, was a fair bit more expensive, but it has dropped very recently down to a 10-cent card. With Modern Horizons 3 getting a reprint there, uncommon now as well, dropping down from down from rare. So this is a really, really nice card because of its second ability. So obviously, it's a land, you tap, add colorless. That's nice. It's nice to have cards that tap to add colorless. If you don't necessarily need all colored mana, if you can make use of the second part, you pay one, you tap, and then move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent. Now, you can only do it as a sorcery, so you can only do this actually on your turn, so you need to kind of plan it out. It's not like something you can do at instant speed to be like, hey, you're removing my thing and do this. But a couple different things here is that you can move it onto just another target permanent, any target permanent. So the way finality counters are explained is if a creature with a finality counter on it would die, exile it instead. So if you were to use your non-nesting ground to remove something from your creatures, right? So remove this finality counter from your creature. You can go put it on your enemy's commander. You can put it on their, creature that they're recurring a whole bunch, or, there's just so many different uses for this that able to put this on someone else's creatures is just incredibly important, as well as being one of the best ways to get rid of them off of your creatures. Now, previously, I haven't really talked about this because I didn't think it was super important, but Bloomburrow kind of brought out some really interesting finality counter cards. Mostly, they've previously been for resurrections or bringing things back from the graveyard, return blah blah from the graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter. In fact, that was basically all of them. where, you know, if you bring something back from your graveyard to the battlefield, then they came back with a finality counter. But now we've got this one, which is Castrel, who I'm incredibly excited for, because you can play a bird from your hand, and it comes with a finality counter. So you may put a bird creature from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So you can just, you know, cheat out any bird card with this. So I believe he is the first card that is not a like a resurrection recurrence card to actually have a finality counters tied to it here. Which makes it very interesting, and it's definitely a design space that I can see them kind of going into in the future. There's a very interesting way for them to be like, hey, you can cheat these cards out, but just keep in mind that if they were to, you know, die afterwards, they will be exiled. Now, the uses for nesting grounds obviously go far beyond just, you know, finality counters. I think finality counters is the most kind of the best start to them, but we can look at some other stuff that they've started doing a bit more of. You know, I'm not so much doing more of with sagas, but most recently, you know, we've had some very decent sagas, especially with the Assassin's Creed set. There was a whole bunch of sagas that came alongside that you can make use of with these to move either the counters either to another saga that you've got, or just move the counters off of that saga and, you know, go put the saga counter on whatever you like. I don't care. Like, put it on your opponent's, it has to be a permanent, right? Put it on your opponent's creatures for all I care. Give them saga counters because that sounds hilarious. But you can just use it to remove saga counters once per turn. Very, very nice. If you've got a way to untap, which, you know, there's a lot of different ways you could potentially untap nesting grounds as well. This once per turn is not so limited either. Like, you can use it more than once per turn. So, you know, you could do it with sagas. Very interesting. Or there are other cards, you know, within the last few sets, there's been a lot of different kind of counter-based cards, and they've started adding a lot, in my opinion, more counter-based cards where, you know, it's stuff like Me the Immortal here, where she gets either a first strike counter, vigilance counter, menace counter. You could then use these to move them around, move them around with nesting grounds to put them on other creatures, or the better way, load her up with other counters. You know, you could give her whatever counters you want. She keeps them as long as she doesn't go into your hand or library. You know, give her a death touch counter, give her, you know, a shield counter. You could do so many different things with a counter-based deck with Me the Immortal as the lead of it, where you don't necessarily need to even have cards that actually just give her the counters directly. You could give them to other creatures and then move them onto her, because why not? We've also got stuff like Owen Grady and Blue Loyal Raptor, which are a very interesting card, like a very interesting pair. I actually really want to build them. I haven't got around to it yet. But with Owen himself, he can put a menace, trample, reach, or haste counter onto target dinosaur. If he puts them onto Blue, Blue has the ability to give all of those counters to every single other dinosaur that enters. But it's not just these counters from Owen, right? You could give Blue any counters you want. If you really wanted to, you could give Blue a finality counter, and then all your dinosaurs enter with a finality counter because for some reason you hate dinosaurs, but you're still playing a dinosaur deck. You could give her a death touch counter. You could give her a shield counter. You know, the sky's the limit. You could do so many awesome counter things with Blue and Owen. And Nesting Grounds is just such a great card to enable that. There are so many different ways you can make use of this card, right? Next, you've also got the fact that they've started adding some other different counter cards in. With Modern Horizons 3, I think that was probably the most amount of like counter cards. I think there was a card for nearly every single type of counter they could potentially do. So stuff like Gift of the Viper, as well as the fact that this is just a common. This is just a common card, right? So it's a 10-cent card. And this synergizes really well with Nesting Grounds, because if your creature's going to die and it's got these counters on it, just use Nesting Grounds to move them away, or move one of them away, or, you know, do lots of different things. You could just move your counters around, or, you know, you're finished with them on, like, say, for example, you put something out on turn 2, right? And then turn 3, you play Gift of the Viper, you know, and then you can move them around, and then you've got blue that comes out after that. Then you can use Nesting Grounds to move the counters from whatever you put them from Gift of the Viper onto your blue. There's just a lot of different ways you can make use of this. And, you know, as I said, like in Modern Horizons 3, there was just so many different types of counters here. Put a shield counter on target permanent with the Proud Pack Rhino. You know, those death touch counters, as I said, like just so many cool ways you can make use of this. And Nesting Grounds just enables so many different ways of this. But anyway, you guys may have already known about this. There's newer players that probably don't. So I'm hoping that at least somebody gets something out of this video. As I said, this 10-cent rare is just become a 10-cent uncommon. It's just becoming more and more powerful with every single set, or more and more useful. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Have a great day and goodbye.